we'll start here with, I'm sure a number of you saw this. Whoopi Goldberg was suspended from The View for some comments about the Holocaust. And she's just flat out wrong in these comments, you guys. I have mixed feelings about the suspension. I have mixed feelings about the suspension. Be totally honest with you on that one. I'm a little bit in between. I can see both sides on the suspension. But the comments were flatly wrong. And I want to show you guys a clip here of a British comedian and author who addressed that. And he's Jewish and addressed that using his experience and his family's experience as an example. Why Whoopi is wrong that anti-Semitism is not a form of racism. It very obviously is. So this is David Baddiel, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, on Good Morning Britain, explaining why Whoopi Goldberg is just not correct about her take on anti-Semitism.
The problem with it is there's so many issues, and I'm a fan of Whoopi Goldberg's, always been a fan of her, but there are so many issues what she's saying. It does reveal an awful lot about the confusions that people have around anti-Semitism that are explored in my book. And one of the principal things going on here is the resistance to the idea that anti-Semitism is racism. And I think, what does Whoopi Goldberg think it is? Well, I think what a lot of people think it is religious intolerance. And the problem with that is, I'm an atheist, and the Gestapo would have shot me tomorrow. My great-uncle Arno, who died in the Warsaw Ghetto, was not an observant Jew. And indeed, it's not just the Holocaust. Now, neo-Nazis marching with torches saying the Jews will not replace us in Charlottesville, they would not ask a Jew whether he kept kosher before they set light to their house. They're not interested in faith, and the Nazis were not interested in faith. They were interested in racial purity. That's what the Nuremberg laws were. They were racial purity laws.
But that comment suggests that there are people who think racism is only about the colour of your skin.
Yeah, no, that's true. And there's a specific thing that I think is going on here, which is, you know, Jews, the whiteness of Jews is a very complex thing. I use this phrase in the book, it's a bit early for this, but anyway, called Schrodinger's white. So what I mean by that is Jews are seen as white or non-white depending on the politics of the observer, right? So far-right groups, and for years and years, centuries, have seen Jews as not part of the white races, absolutely part of Hitler's project to say Jews are not part of the Aryan white races. But meanwhile, on the other side, on the far left, the association of Jews, which is a racist thing with power and privilege, makes them kind of super white. And what that ends up with, it's similar to be honest, in the Black Lives Matter thing with saying all lives matter, because it takes away from the specifics of the racism to something very bland and general, like man's inhumanity to man. OK, but what's going on here is actually a very particular type of genocide. She talked on Stephen Colbert's show about two sides fighting. This was not two sides fighting. This was an ethnic group being marked out to be destroyed by a military-industrial machine.
So he explains that very well, you guys. The main point he makes, they're not concerned about whether you kept kosher. He says, I'm an atheist and they would execute me tomorrow. It's spot on. These groups are not engaging in religious bigotry. They're engaging in racism. The Nazis were set out to engage in ethnic cleansing. They were not questioning people on how faithful they were, okay? So I understand why people may, without much understanding of the history, assume that anti-Semitism is a form of religious bigotry, but you need to understand it's not. It can be both. Sure, it can be both, but it is certainly racism. And the history of anti-Semitism, certainly the violence against Jewish communities, has been centered on ethnicity, not beliefs. So a great job there by David breaking that down and explaining why Whoopi is mistaken here. And I don't, I'm no fan of Whoopi Goldberg necessarily, you guys. Like, The View is absolutely awful. I'm not trying to but I don't think she has malicious intent in saying this. I think she's ignorant. I think she's never had to engage in this history and understand this stuff and learn this stuff. So I think it was ignorance. I don't think that she hates Jews. I'm not trying to say that. I think the suspension was questionable. I tend to just kind of cringe at the idea of deplatforming people in general, but obviously I also think a network has, or any private business has, the right to decide that that content is not up to our standards. So I have mixed feelings about the suspension. I don't like the idea of having so much content under the control of so few. I don't like the idea of oligarchic control of media, right? So I feel uncomfortable on both sides of the suspension issue, if you guys kind of get what I'm saying. But Whoopi is in the wrong here, and I hope that this was maybe an opportunity because she slipped up and this became a news story. I would like to think that this is maybe a reminder that for people all around, you know, like to engage and learn something they might not have known if they previously thought, like Whoopi, that anti-Semitism was limited to religious bigotry. So I hope that she learned. She came out with a statement that, quite frankly, was not very encouraging. She tried to kind of walk a line and say, I understand why people were upset, but then she also kind of doubled down on her position, which is really too bad. That even after taking some time to try to understand it and seeing people's response, she still kind of doubled down on her point. And so I just want to make sure that it's known I condemn any and all forms of racism, xenophobia, misogyny, anti-LGBTQ bigotry. I will not call it homophobia because it's not. I mean, while hate is rooted in fear, I get it. I think that lets people off the hook. That term, what they're doing is hate. It's not. You're not scared of the gay person. You're engaging in hate and bigotry. But you guys get my point. I oppose all bigotry. I oppose all of those kinds of prejudices. And I think we all need to work to address the prejudices that society instills in us, because our institutions do have those implicit biases. And, you know, obviously included in that group is anti-Semitism. It's disgusting, absolutely disgusting. And especially seeing you guys right now, like we're seeing a lot of emboldened right-wingers and fascists and Nazis. We're arming neo-Nazis in the Ukraine right now. And that movement seems to be kind of making a comeback of sorts. And he mentioned the fascist groups doing demonstrations in the United States. Do you think that they care if someone keeps kosher or not? No, they don't. So I want to dispel with the notion that the mistaken notion that anti-Semitism boils down to exclusively religious bigotry. It does not. The history of oppression and violence against the Jewish community is a matter of ethnic cleansing. So I hope Whoopi learns. I hope some other people may have learned from this. Great job by David breaking that down from his experience.